All right, so let's get started. Thank you, everybody, for coming or zooming into this session. Of course, this is part of the International Forum on Youth 2021. And this is our third year, as you know. Our first year was 2 years ago when the theme was identity. Last year, we held this on Zoom, and the theme was migration. And this year, we are looking at the theme of transition and what the transition has this been for our life in general. And so this is the maybe perhaps the most exciting session of all. I should not say that, but I'm biased because I get to host this, so I get to facilitate the student panel. And so with us, we have a great panelist group, and this is the students from COC, and it's great to have you. And also, for if you're tuning in and if you're a part of the audience, I really do appreciate your attending. And we get to hear a student voice. And this is one of the rare chances we have to actually get to hear, straight from students. And at this particular panel, we feature, student-led conversation on how to move from our understanding of contemporary problems facing our youth to taking actions. So we will be talking about, what actions we can take as we try to solve or address these challenges facing our youth, the generation of youth. So I'm looking forward to the conversation for the next hour and a half. We will discuss these wonderful things, and we'll try to solve all the problems of the world. And so the world would be better off in an hour and a half. Okay, so I am going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves, and then we will start. And I have like 5 or 6 questions I'd like to ask. Anything else I should mention before? I think we should be okay, right? Yeah. Oh, and by the way, if you do have questions, we may be able to address your questions from time to time, but it's probably best if you use the chat room or the chat box if you have any questions, and then we have a Q&A session at the end of our conversation. Okay, so I am going to pick the panelists in the order I see in front of me. And so I have Kayla, Cameron, Sona, Collin, and Sona in that order. And I have to be really careful because these 2 young ladies have a similar first name, Sona and Sona, and not to be confused with my own wife, who is Sona, S-O-N-A-H. And so it is really, really confusing. Okay. All right, Kayla.
Okay.
Go ahead. Okay.
I'm Kayla Jaramillo, and I am currently the ASG Executive Vice President of Activities. This is my 3rd year here at COC, and I'm looking forward to speaking at.
Thank you. What's your major, Kayla?
So I'm currently pursuing a degree in nursing, so hopefully a nursing program out there accepts me.
All right, great.
Out there accepts me.
Yeah. Cameron, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Cameron. This is my 2nd year at College of the Canyons. I'm majoring in business administration with also pursuing a degree in marketing. Yes, I'm also just started here at ISP. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion today.
And thank you for taking part. Sona?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sona, and I am a student worker here at ISP. This is my last year at College of the Canyons before I transfer out. I'm a double major, communication studies and admin to the justice system. I'm also a president of Communication Studies Club, as well as being a member of the speech team. Like you said, today's theme is transition. So I've been in all kinds of transitions in my life. I've had to learn English, move across the US, and transfer many schools. So I'm excited to be here and share my thoughts and experiences. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. Okay, Collin. Yeah, go ahead and unmute yourself, and then you
Hello. Hi, my name's Collin. I am a sociology major. I was originally a computer science major, but I find my passion is more with helping people than writing computer code. So, but it's a pleasure to be here today and to speak with all of you. I'm very passionate about some of the issues we'll be discussing today, and I've experienced some of them myself. So, you know, it is very, very important to be talking about these things, you know, and not just putting them under the rug.
Great. We are looking for some robust discussions. So thank you for being here. And Sona?
Hello, my name is Sona. I am the Social Student Involvement Coordinator in the Associated Student Government here. I'm also an environmental science major who is pursuing the Pathway to Law School program. And yeah, I'm very excited to be here and to talk about these issues.
Okay. So thank you. And again, you know, at the end of this conversation, we hope to hear from everybody, you know, including the people who are in the audience. And so I would appreciate all your input. All right, so let's get started with our questions to the panelists. And initially, I will probably go with the order in which you introduce yourselves. But starting like question number 2, I would solicit anybody's, you know, a response. If you'd rather not respond to a question, that's okay as well. I am not going to make you say anything you don't have to say. So, all right. So here's the first question.
Sorry, Sab. Sorry for
Yes.
the interruption. I think
That's
we
okay.
have one more speaker who just joined us.
Oh,
Qian-Hui.
okay. Good. Yes, go ahead.
Hi,
Yeah.
thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm from Taiwan and I'm an international student studying at COC for the second year here. And for the first year, I take classes from Taiwan, and so I came here since July. So it's an honor to get involved in this group.
Good. And I couldn't get, what was your major?
My major is accounting and business administration.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm glad that you were able to join us. I was told that maybe you could not make it possibly, but I'm glad that you got to join us. Okay, so we have a panel of 6 students here. And the first question now is, it's a very general one, but what do you think of when you hear the word global or globalization? And you can also extend it to even a more popular term now, which is internationalization. So global or globalization or internationalization, what comes to your mind when you hear these words? So let's start with Kayla.
So when I hear the words global and globalization, I think of just like, you know, our international affairs and maybe even like multicultural affairs and being able to work with countries outside of the US possibly. So very simple like way that I think about it, but obviously it's not there's more to it. There's definitely.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Cameron.
Yeah, when I think about the word global or globalization, I frankly think of the future. I think that the future lies in interglobal communication, whether it be business. I mean, I have family in Brazil that I can connect with in less than minutes. You know, it's something that hasn't been available, I'd say, except for in recent time. And I think that's something that's definitely going to stick with us in the future. And being able to have that communication all around the globe is something that's going to be a very valuable asset moving forward.
Good, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Jenna.
When I hear global or globalization, I think of the globe. I think of like international countries, and I think like worldwide, universal, like a picture as a whole, inclusive, and no one left out.
Sorry, sometimes I forget to unmute myself. You have to remind me if I do that. But thank you. That's absolutely absolutely right. You know, we think of inclusion. That's another very important word in our society today. Okay, Collin.
When I think of globalization, what comes to my mind is an interconnected web where we have almost instantaneous access to events happening across the globe. Previously, you know, we wouldn't have that kind of information available at our fingertips. Furthermore, it represents a push towards information available to all rather than just a few. You know, this country was founded on actually minority rule, not majority rules. Many of us have been led to believe, but globalization has brought to the forefront all kinds of information that previously, you know, not everyone had complete access to. And I know that informs our politics and allows us to look at humanitarian issues going across the world and bring, you know, a focal, you know, point to that so that we can pay attention to more than just what's happening in our, you know, local area. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a very good response here too. And let's see, we have Sona.
Yeah, I mean, first word that comes to my mind when I hear globalization would definitely be diversity. Not only experiencing and appreciating other different cultures, but also accommodating them for all of our projects and all of our different things that we want to do and ways that we want to expand our work.
Good. Okay, thank you. This is your first name is Qian-Hui, right? Or something similar to it.
Yes.
I have a hard time pronouncing it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So when I heard about globalization, I first knew about diversity too. And for me, globalization is the process that happens all around the world where we get international influences from like business, media, and because of the globalization, it helps people to get to know others' culture and learn different languages from different countries and yeah, everything. So it brings people closer together.
Okay, thank you very much. And so I wanted to just mention one thing before I go on. You know, you talk about communication. I personally am a former an exchange student. I was born and raised in Japan. When I first came to the United States, there was obviously no such thing as the internet. In fact, using the international lines on telephone was quite expensive. So, and you may not believe this, but there used to be this thing called letters that you actually write with pen and ink on a piece of paper, and you actually send it by airmail. And so that's how I communicated with my parents, you know, and so it takes like a week for that letter to get to my parents. And that's how we used to communicate. So, and it's not that long ago, you know, but anyway, so the life is very different these days. And I do appreciate your, you know, idea of globalization, because certainly the world has transitioned as along with our theme. All right, so the next question is it's a loaded question. We have a lot to talk about. So the next question is, what do you think is an urgent, pressing issue facing today's youth? Now, you are all young people. And, you know, there is nothing that you can't talk about. I do want you to be just, you know, direct and honest and straightforward about anything that you feel is urgent and a pressing issue facing today's youth. So anyone who just want to just talk, you can unmute yourself and talk.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'd say the most pressing urgency for us is I would say climate change. I think that our generation is really going to have to be the generation that is going to push for more climate action and climate justice. And if we don't do it, I don't know if our children will be able to do it, if I'm quite honest with you.
Very good point. Okay, so you know, you can describe something else, or we can follow up on that comment, whichever direction. I don't want to dictate the flow of thoughts or something else. So anybody else?
I mean, I would love to talk. I could talk forever about climate change. Definitely. I mean, in the next 100 years, we're projected to have the global temperature of the Earth go up about 2 degrees Celsius, which doesn't sound like a lot, but to put it into perspective, the last ice age happened when the global temperature changed to it went down 5 degrees Celsius. So that is very significant, especially when you consider that the ice age happened so many years, like thousands of millions of years ago. So definitely, especially considering that we're going to be the ones who are going to be raising our kids and our grandkids over the next 100 years. It is really a huge pressing issue for us because we don't really know how much worse it could get, especially when you think about how extreme the ice age was. Okay, what does that translate to when it goes to be 5 degrees hotter? So it's really scary to think about, and we really should be wanting to make the world a better place, not only just for ourselves, but for our kids, or for our grandkids, and for our great grandkids who we may never get to meet. The whole point in making a legacy is making sure that that you create a world that'll be better for others and your loved ones, not just for yourself.
Wow, excellent points. Okay, anybody else want to chime in on this?
I would like to switch the topic. So if anyone wants to continue
Sure.
discussing climate change, please speak.
But well, yeah, or we can come back, and discuss it at other time. I mean,
Okay.
later too. Yeah. Go ahead.
So this is something I'm very passionate about, as I've been homeless before. It prevented me from finishing high school, and there are many, young students around the world that are not getting adequate access to education because they don't have adequate access to home life and, healthcare and food and etc. In fact, this last year, during the 58th session of the UN Commission for Social Development, they had discussed how there are 1.6 billion people worldwide that live in inadequate housing conditions. And young people are the age group with the highest risk of becoming homeless. And this is a quote I actually want to give to you. If any of you have seen the movie, The Pursuit of Happiness, which is about a real man named Chris Gardner, who had dealt with homelessness and then fought to become the wealthy man he is today. And he wrote, "It could happen to anyone. It's not always drugs or alcohol. It's not always something external. Life happens, and life can happen to a whole lot of us. It did during the great financial crisis, and it could very well happen again." So, I think the great thing that globalization brings to this is we can see how much of an issue it is globally, not just nationally. And furthermore, how different countries tackle the issue can sometimes shed light on perhaps how barbaric our system is, under a capitalistic society that values money over people. So, I would like to see that change, and I would like to see a push amongst youth today so that tomorrow when, I'm much older and, looking towards the next generation, they don't have these kinds of issues they have to deal with.
Thank you, Collin. I appreciate your speaking up on that issue. I know that many college students today are having a difficulty with the Homeland Security and so on. That's a great point. Okay, again, you can elaborate on that, or you can talk about something else. What we could do is to, list all these different challenges, and then we can just go back to whichever we want to, or, you can just piggyback on that one as well.
I wanted actually to mention another issue.
Sure.
So I think that we're like a big issue that we're facing today, or like as of right now, is mental health issues. I think with what's going on in the world, with climate change, economics, politics, and well, we have like the regular school pressure and personal and social life. A lot of youth are feeling pressured, and this is resulting in some mental health issues. With like the feeling of, oh, I don't know if I can help, or feeling useless or powerless. So it causes a lot of depression, and it only went up when COVID happened and the isolation happened with quarantine and not being able to do much about the things we're passionate or the things we care about. So that's one of the issues a lot of people are facing.
No, that's an excellent point. Thank you so much. Good.
And I wanted to piggyback off that what Sona said, but I know that in relation to mental health, I know that in different cultures, they don't even recognize that mental health is existent. Like, I know that for me, I had to have those hard conversations with my parents to let them know that mental health is real, and it's something that we deal with, and that I'm not alone, and that so many other students and youth face today. So yeah, I just wanted to include that.
Yeah, that's a great point too, and thank you so much. I know that the way that the mental health is dealt with really does differ from country to country and from culture to culture. Even like within the United States, you have these different groups that treat this very differently. And so I really do appreciate it. And part of that maybe with a generation, like you said, our parents' generations or your parents' generation, which is probably my generation, we may have different ideas of what mental health is and isn't. So that's a very good point. Okay, all right, let's just, really talk about any of these things or anything else you want to talk about.
One of the reasons that mental health is an issue because of the phone addiction. That today's youngs are addicted to using the phone and using social media, and they spend all their time on social media instead of study. And sometimes the social media has a huge impact on their mental health. And yeah.
Yeah, I think you were saying that sometimes what is called the addiction to the internet or the social media is also related partly to social mental health issues, I guess, right?
And honestly, I would say that phone addiction, even though it did exist long before COVID, it definitely got much worse for a lot of different people in COVID because there's basically nothing else to do besides being on the internet and being on your phone, which in itself created it like its own like layer of isolation where we were physically isolated from like people and other different things. But then we were also isolated in the fact that we just stayed online the entire time and we didn't have real face-to-face interaction with people. And that has really led to a lot of lack of like true depth in conversation, because when you have conversation online especially, it's very easy to hide behind the profile picture and hide behind the anonymity, and you don't really have a really good like genuine conversation. You end up just kind of fighting, and you also end up kind of just demonizing a lot of different people when in reality a lot of people are good, and in my opinion at least, a lot of people are good and a lot of people are kind. They just that just needs to be dug out a little bit more.
Wow, that's great point. Okay.
I wanted to add more on like the social media aspect.
Sure.
I think people have gotten used to romanticizing fake lives on social media. A lot of people just display kind of like a perfect little life online on Instagram. And this is kind of causing also mental health issues with people seeing, oh, this person has a perfect life, why don't I have that? And it's going to cause these issues and the depression and all of that as well.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, and to continue off of what Sena said, it's you kind of find yourself like on social media just like deep diving, looking into other people's profiles, and then you start to compare, and then all your insecurities come out. And it's just, that's one aspect of social media that really affects a lot of us, is that because of that perception that, oh, my life is amazing and there's no problems going on, even though in reality there probably is, we fall into that trap of social media where we're constantly trying to desire something that might be unattainable or might be unrealistic, like Sena had mentioned.
Okay.
And if I may piggyback off of that, I think another issue, and this has been going on prior to the invention of social media and the internet, is I think people glorify happiness. They have this ideal of what happiness is. And if you're not happy for a prolonged period of time, then you're abnormal. Well, I'm sorry to say that humans express a wide range of emotions and deal with a wide range of issues that not everyone might face. And sometimes embracing sadness or depression or anxiety or anger or any of those emotions is the step towards becoming happier and wholer and fuller. And I think, definitely social media, sort of amplifies our, desire to just be happy all the time and view this like ideal of we have to be happy. And I don't think we need to, and I don't think it's realistic.
I have to say, I am hearing lots of words of wisdom. This is excellent. Thank you so much. So we can move on to the next question. Let me just summarize what we have been hearing from the second question. First, there was climate change. We talked about homelessness, and that quote from Pursuit of Happiness, which, by the way, I love that movie. And then there was mental health and all sorts of things related to it. How different cultures deal with mental health. And then the phone addiction, romanticizing perfect life, sort of glorifying happiness, and the danger of social media, and especially in the pandemic. Before we go to the, well, by the way, you are all, I think, all the panelists who are given these questions in advance, and so the social media issue will come back again. But before we go on to the next question of youth culture, anything that anybody wants to add about these things or any of these ideas, challenges? We can certainly come back to these. We probably will, but anything else? Okay, so maybe it's good to go through our questions, because then that may raise more questions and conversations. Our third question is, in your opinion, what are some of the things that define youth culture today? And it could be, limited to your observation and experience in the United States. If you happen to be from another country, or if you are familiar with other culture, you could also mention what the youth culture is in that specific, area. But anyway, the question is, what is youth culture today?
I think a good example, or a good point of view youth culture, I think would say to challenge societal norms. I would say I think a lot of youth culture is intertwined in that. Obviously, we've seen generation after generation a lot of new things were somewhat thought as quote unquote like not normal, is now, which didn't make sense at all, is now normalized and now is accepted in our society. But I mean, teens are obviously usually considered rebellious, but I personally don't think that rebellion is always supposed to be a negative term.
Yeah, good. That's absolutely right. I mean, when I was growing up, our youth, we were the rebellious generation, and my parents say that they were considered rebellious compared to their parents' generation. So, sure. Okay. Any other things that would define our youth culture today?
I would say, I don't know if it necessarily defines youth culture, but I would say something that definitely affects it and definitely influences youth culture a lot, especially within the United States and within our generation, would be TikTok. Pretty much everything, in my opinion, that to do with teenagers today, when it comes to fashion trends, when it comes to activism, when it comes to literally anything, is pretty much determined on TikTok. I would say, I don't know, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I personally spend a lot of time on that social media app. And it really, I'm definitely not a much different person. I'm definitely a different person than I was before I started using it. But it really does shape a lot, and it really has made a huge impact, I think, on a lot of different teens.
That's a really interesting comment, because I remember over the pandemic, I would say TikTok has really become popular. I'm kind of old school. I don't have a TikTok, and I remember seeing a study back a couple months back that it was 70% of teenagers and youth now prefer watching 30 minutes of short TikToks than watching a 30-minute YouTube video. Personally, for me, I prefer watching a YouTube video. I'm really old school like that. I was brought up on YouTube, and I'm not really I'm a staunch on that kind of. But yeah, I could definitely see. I mean, I don't have a TikTok, but I definitely find myself falling down the rabbit hole of Instagram Reels. That's one thing. Even though I don't have TikTok, I still find my way on Instagram Reels somehow.
Same thing.
I want to add on both of your guys's points. I think TikTok also influenced a lot of like important things, like for example, the BLM movement. When it was happening during quarantine and when the protests were happening, I could see some tips and some information about protesting and how to protect yourself while protesting. And a lot of people were posting about where they're protesting. And it kind of adds both of like the social media aspect and the kind of like the rebellious part of like, hey, we're together in this, we're doing this together. So, yeah.
I think these are some great points. And I just wanted to add that while social media can also amplify these issues, which it certainly has, and I think it's been a benefit overall, it also can encourage sort of that artificial, I support this without actually doing anything actionable about it. In my English class, we discussed this distinction in how social movements prior to the internet, such as the women's rights movement, or the right for African Americans to vote and things of that nature, they had to do a lot more when they organized their protests. They had to really get themselves organized. And so they were able to do a lot more actionable things. Whereas today, sometimes you might post something to Instagram or see a bunch of people are talking about something, and then you'll be like, oh, it's being handled, we're okay. Or it'll obscure, what really needs to be done, to handle the issues. And also, just as social media can really amplify, these humanitarian issues that we support, it also can amplify the voices of those who speak out against it and bring them together, because social media algorithms target your interests. So if someone is opposed to some of these human rights, then they certainly get to find the group that will get them connected and perhaps even organized to protest against the protesters. So it is.
Anyone else wants to unmute yourself and add some comments?
I would have to say that I do agree with Collin. We have been seeing a lot of performative activism, especially within our generation, where we kind of want to make a difference, but many people seem very misguided in how exactly to do that. Like during the Black Lives Matter movement, when people were just posting the black squares on their Instagram, while it does spread awareness and while that does help, at the end of the day, it doesn't really help many people. But I think it's better, definitely, than it has been in the past, where at least now there is awareness to these issues that would have never gotten awareness to begin with. And they've been able to spread, and we've been able to help with them. Or especially within the past, where people didn't care about these issues or maybe were against them, it was a lot more common. But I do agree that maybe social media has led to really polarization between a lot of different people, especially within our generation, because we're only seeing the people that we agree with and the people that we agree with and the people that are similar to us, versus getting kind of a view of other different people. So that kind of has sparked a lot of like the fieriness within Generation Z that I think a lot of people claim that we have and all this stuff.
Very good. Just for curiosity, how long is a TikTok video, or how long can it be?
Well, they used to be like 15 seconds to a minute, but lately they can go up to 3 minutes long. And I think Cameron touched on this earlier, but I think a big thing within our generation is that we do have some attention issues where it's not very easy for me to watch a very long video anymore. So I'm suffering a little bit with that, but yeah, they're usually around like 30 seconds to a minute.
And I think there is more appeal to like, I mean, there's some people, I mean, personally, I prefer watching a 18 to 20 minute long video rather than, but I get the appeal of watching those 15 to 20 second short videos to get possibly more, I don't know, more information or have more enjoyment. It's honestly, I think it's just down to personal preference.
Okay, I could see some faculty saying, "Oh yeah, that figures." We make like a 3-minute video on how to use Canvas or something. It's like, and students like, "Oh, this is too long. I don't have time to watch this." 3 minutes, you know. Okay, so we can come back and talk about these issues. And of course, the next question is very much related to what we have been talking about. In fact, we have been talking about this already. And the question, I'm going to give you a little initial comment about this question. The question is, what are some pros and cons of social media? And as you have been saying, I just want to give you a personal illustration here. As you know, I mean, like you said, the Facebook and other social media platforms have been used for these, you know, movements and the BLM, the Black Lives Matter and Me Too movement, and you know, in fact, going back to the Arab Spring, you know, which really made a big change in the Middle East and North Africa. But personally, and just in the last couple of days, I used to teach like 20 years ago. There's a group of Japanese families that have classes in Japanese, and they want to teach their children the Japanese language and culture. So every Saturday, I would go down to Santa Monica, and along with a bunch of Japanese teachers, you know, we would be teaching these often second generation students from Japan, or they were born here, in Japanese, you know, their culture and language and so on. Just in the last couple of days, one of my former students found me in Facebook and sent me a direct message. That's great. That's a pro of Facebook. Also, he contacted me because one of his classmates had passed away, which is, you know, really sad. I mean, it's good that we were able to communicate, but, and again, going back to this other issue of mental health, there was a real difficulty in the way, you know, this other student who was also very smart, very brilliant, good kid, just found out has lost his life. And so, you know, I see the pros and cons myself, and I want to hear from the young people, you know, such as you, because I am not familiar with many other platforms. Like, I don't use TikTok. I barely touch Instagram, and you know, but what is it like from your standpoint, the pros and cons of social media? Again, anybody with a comment can just unmute yourself and you can speak.
If you want to go first, Sana, go. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go first. I think social media helped a lot with communication and keeping in touch. Like I said before, I've moved a lot across not only the US, but the world, basically. And I still have connections with my friends in Jordan, in Syria, and I still have friends from New York that I still talk to. And actually, I was talking to my friend from Virginia literally today during my break. So it's really good that we keep in touch through social media, especially in the COVID era where we had to stay home. So the communication aspect of it was really helpful. But also it has the negatives, right? Where you're kind of on it 24/7. It's taking your attention. It's while we're in class, we might have a notification, and that's notification is like distracting us, right? So there's pros and cons.
Yeah, I'd really like to argue that it's a double-edged sword, social media. I personally think that it could be a great thing or it could be a terrible thing. It really just, it's on perception. Like for me personally, I'm a lot on Instagram. Instagram and Twitter are probably my two favorite most social media pages. For Instagram, I have a lot of friends, and I also have a lot of family from Chile and Brazil, and to be able to keep up with them and keep up with their lives and in just seconds, it's honestly unbelievable to me that we're able to do that in this day and age. And also for Twitter, I am on Twitter a lot because I like getting my world news, political news daily, just keep up on stuff. I like to be well informed with the news, and I think Twitter offers a somewhat, I mean, obviously you have to be very, very careful with what you get with, but it could be a very valuable asset. And there are some negative things. Obviously, it's very addicting. I find myself on my phone quite a bit without even really realizing it. I'm just on my phone, you know. And it also, with social media, I think with Instagram especially, I think for lack of a better use of word, people want that validation, I would say, to have all those people, you know, like your post, be tracking your lives or tracking your life. I think it brings a little sense of like happiness, and if that isn't achieved, it could become a negative thing. But that's just personally me. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think it can be a really negative thing for mental health, and we have seen it before.
I completely agree. When you were talking about like the world news and all that, while social media is a great way to keep updated on those issues, it's almost like you're a little bit too updated. I've seen myself especially becoming really desensitized to a lot of tragedies because you hear about every single tragedy that happens in the world as soon as it happens. And when you just get those notifications over and over and over again, it's like, okay, you can't physically be sad at every single one of them or you would never stop being sad. I see a new school shooting on Twitter every single day, basically, or I see someone who got murdered or something like that. And at that point, it just becomes another story. It just becomes another notification and not a real event that happened in my mind, which I think is pretty harmful, unfortunately. But yeah, I completely, I think that's probably one of the biggest negatives that comes with social media.
Yeah, I think also something I forgot to mention was the growth of, definitely, especially in this past year, misinformation, whether it be COVID misinformation, election misinformation, etc. It's really become a hive ground for social media to be one of those launching grounds for completely false or misinformed beliefs. And it's a scary thing because I mean, I've seen people myself, they've just fallen down this rabbit hole of unbelievable things that they just believe about. And it's just terrible because I really respect them as people, but it's terrible what they're thinking about, or not what they're thinking about, what their beliefs are, because they're just completely on fallacies and illogical beliefs. It's really sad to see.
Not only that, but people are profiting off the fact that they are spreading misinformation, which causes more people to do it. And that's very, very easy to do on social media. And that can make you a lot of money, which means more and more people are going to do that. They're going to spread the misinformation and they're going to cause chaos because at the end of the day, they're making money from it.
Yeah,
Piggybacking off what Sona just said. Oh, sorry, you can go ahead. Okay. I wanted to bring this up. So we know all about the Cambridge Analytica scandal that was in 2016. We have also, you know, come to the realization that social media is not free. And when you go to a free service like this, there's something they're getting out of it. And you have to look at what their business model is. And a lot of the business models for all these companies is a lot more profitable than you might think, by just merely packaging all your data with an anonymous ID and selling it off to some, you know, corporation that wants to sell that data or use that data to market products, or, as we saw with Cambridge Analytica, sometimes sell to other countries that have vested interest in creating chaos within our political system. But not to say it's all bad, because it's not. It's, you know, if you know how to manipulate the tool, then you could argue it doesn't manipulate you as much as you manipulate it. So while the algorithms do sort of force you into a vacuum based on the interests you have, I think it's kind of on you to realize that, and then to say, okay, well, if I'm going to use this so that I can talk about these issues I care about or communicate with people outside of just my worldview, then you have to sort of spend the effort to go outside of it and to, you know, do your own research, which does not mean going to unvetted websites and Facebook posts and Reddit posts. It means going to peer-reviewed studies and websites that actually have accountability if they write something that's incorrect, things of that nature. We like to talk a lot of bad things about the media when it comes to the big corporations like MSNBC or CNN or Fox or all these different places. But ultimately, those organizations to an extent have more accountability than a lot of these smaller sites do. So you do have to kind of compare and contrast and really look into what's going on. But yeah, I mean, it is very much a double-edged sword. I do agree.
Wow, this is awesome. I mean, I'm just really enjoying listening to all of you. Qian-Hui, I don't know if you wanted to comment on any of these things. Pros and cons of social media. Okay.
Yeah, for me, I think social media is good or bad, depends on how you use it. So for me, if I'm in the United States and my parents is in Taiwan, so the only way we can communicate is through social media. But if I addict to it, like if I on it all the time and using Instagram, then I addict to social media, and that is the cons. It might affect my mental health or my everything, like and so, but also there are some wrong information provided by social media, like people posted some tips on TikTok, which is not actually real, but because they edit the video and seems like real and people might believe it and actually do that. So that is one of the cons.
Yeah, so I think your generation is one where you may not realize that phones used to be very expensive. I mentioned this a few minutes ago too, but if I were to call Japan to talk to my family, it would have cost me like, depending on how you call it, but it could be like $3 a minute. So for us, any long distance call was costly. And so you pick up the phone, you call, you say what you have to say, and you hang up, right? Where when my daughter calls now, I mean, they're just like on the phone forever. And they're doing their stuff, and I can't quite get that. Like, why would you be on the phone if you have like nothing to talk about? But then, that's the way they do this now. Okay, we're talking about, the telephone, of course, and then we talked about TikTok and, Instagram, Facebook, and I guess you can include things like YouTube and other things. Am I like missing any social media platform that is significant here? I don't know. Maybe you guys are probably a lot more familiar.
There's Snapchat, there's Twitter.
Okay.
I don't know how significant Reddit is. There's Reddit, there's Tumblr. There's a lot. It's kind of hard to keep up with.
I'm going to come out swinging there. You just mentioned Reddit. No one uses it. That's my number one, okay? But yeah, I think one distinction you could make between the platforms she just mentioned and what we've been mentioning before is there's some that have more of a cater to anonymity, and some that are more like Facebook, where they encourage you to be like your whole self, or at least the image of yourself you'd like to project. But point being that you use your name. So, but that's why I like Reddit better, because you can talk about all kinds of issues and learn about all kinds of issues with people, and everyone's anonymous and they're not afraid to speak their mind. So, but also I don't think they have the same exact business model that Facebook and Twitter and all these other ones have. So that's why I tend to like it a bit more, but mileage may vary.
Okay, so that's another good point too. Some people think that anonymity is great because you can share, basically you can say anything you want. But then some people say that it's not good because people are rude and they are not held responsible or accountable for what they say. By the way, I forgot to tell you, I am a heavy Twitter user. I have like 1,500 followers, but that's all in Japanese about a very specific area. Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's about baseball, okay? And my followers don't know who is writing this because I use somebody. I don't use my own name. They don't know where. Well, they know where I live. They don't know how old I am. They don't know that I am actually a math professor. And so I sort of enjoy that anonymity because because I can be somebody else. But again, some people think that anonymity in the social media is a good thing. Some people think it's a bad thing. Any idea, any comments on that, or any opinions on this?
I want to
No.
jump in real quick before anyone says anything. I'm so sorry. Okay, so I think anonymity is actually a really great thing because as we mentioned earlier, when you have your face associated with something, they want to project just one facet of your life, typically, and not all of it. I know we're not all the same in that way, but anonymity, especially in certain places where if they found out who you were, the government might do something about you since you spoke out against them or this or that. It actually, I think, is great. I think it's an amazing thing. I mean, you know, all these things are double-edged swords, but I think anonymity is phenomenal.
Anyone else?
I think it depends on the way you use it. If you're using it to bully people, that's not great. But if you're using it to express your feelings and how you think about certain things, then it's definitely a great thing. It just depends on the context.
I have a question about the Sana. She said cyberbully, right? Yeah, that's one of them. And also, I think social media can be too focused on the appearance. So yeah, that's it. That's what I think.
Yeah, so that's a good point too. We were talking about that earlier too, how, you know, this pursuit of happiness, like the glorification of, you know, self, and then you end up comparing yourself with what you see in the image. And so that is a real issue. And we probably should talk maybe more about this when we go back and discuss that kind of a perfect life that you see in social media, which also contributes, I think, to, you know, mental health and so on. Okay, so any more about the social media, the pros and cons, or the anonymity, or the platforms, or whatever?
I would say we keep anonymity in social media for the most part because like ever since, at least for a lot of us younger people, basically ever since the internet existed, we have been taught internet safety, and the internet is a very dangerous place. It is an extremely dangerous, it is very extremely dangerous to be connected to everyone at all times with no restrictions. So in that case, anonymity is really important, especially if you are a younger person, because it is very easy for people to take advantage of you over the internet. I know many people who have been abused over the internet, who have been groomed over the internet, and it is an unfortunate issue. But then at the same point, if we have an enemy, we cannot, it's harder to find those people who are doing those awful things. So it is really a give and take kind of situation when it comes to that. But at the end of the day, it can be fun to kind of escape from yourself and, you know, explore all your interests that you maybe are too embarrassed to talk about in person. Like when I was in middle school, I'm not gonna lie, I had a Percy Jackson fan page on Instagram, and that was the best time because I got to meet all these different people who also liked Percy Jackson, and I made so many friends from that. And it's some people who I still talk to today, some of my closest online friends. And it is, yeah, again, it is kind of a give and take kind of situation, but if you are being safe on the internet, it can be a great place, especially being anonymous.
Okay, so I want to, I'm looking at the clock as well. So we have until 3:30, but let's go on to the next question. And again, we can go back and discuss, you know, any of these other, the things we talked previously about. But here's the question number 5. And since it's an international forum, I want to focus on the world as opposed to, or, you know, in the context of the world, well, the United States in the context of the world. Okay, so this question is, what do you feel is very unique to American youth culture? And many of you are familiar with cultures from, you know, different parts of the world. So what distinguishes, or what makes the American youth culture unique?
I think something that makes us unique is that we're very passionate and we work hard towards the things we love. I know teens today just don't give up easily, and I love that about us. We don't really give up even things get messy. Like said before, the environment, we're passionate about it and we keep working on it and we protest and we try to get people in power involved to change things that we can't change. So
Besides passion, I think American culture is very confident. Like people here are very confident on what they are doing right now, and they are willing to give everything a try. But in our culture, like people here, they will post video on TikTok and showing what they are doing. But in Taiwan, we don't have many students, many youngs doing that because we are more like shy. We are not sure putting ourselves on the platform to show others. But here, people are confident. They give everything a shot, and they chase their dream. They are very independent, and they know what they are doing. They are chasing, like doing whatever they want. That's a free spirit.
I think something specific to American American youth culture specifically may be the confidence, but a little bit of an overconfidence to the point of narcissism, where we kind of, as Americans especially, believe that we are the center of the world. We are very used to being accommodated for, exactly. We are very used to being accommodated for, especially as English speakers. We kind of believe that we are the center of the universe when we're not. I found that it's like when you leave the United States, it's very much less specific of everyone thinking and talking about the United States, which you sometimes you narcissistically think is the case. But like overseas, because especially I've visited a few countries before. I'm Armenian, and I've been to Armenia a few times. And there, it wasn't so much as like, oh, it's just us who exist everywhere. It's like, no, we're a whole, and we're going to interact with other places and accommodate for them as well. So I think that's kind of like the little dark side of American youth culture right now.
I completely agree with Sona, and I think that, I'm sure international students that come to America face this. How many times have they been told, do you speak American, right? America has this like viewpoint, it seems, that there's only one language we need to know, and everyone that comes here needs to know that language. But it's really interesting because when you look to other English-speaking nations, they actually learn other languages too, or their native language and English. And they're very about, being more cosmopolitan. So I hope that we're moving against that. But it is sort of hard to tell sometimes when you look online and you're focusing on the negative and you're seeing, oh, these people are still out there and they're loud and proud, and, they had their time in the White House to make their stand, but it's really scary. I mean, I don't really, growing up in California and America, I don't really identify with the culture here. I don't identify with our history. I actually think it's pretty disgusting. And, I know there's a lot of people out there that agree, that live here, that have, been here for a long time, and they want to change things. And I applaud that culture. But I think the historical, culture that we have here that's trying to fight to keep things the way they were, I sort of see them as the enemy, and it's kind of sad, and I know they might look at me and say, well, you're the reason why we're divided, but, screw that notion.
I like our honest and robust discussion here. This is great. Yeah. Anyone else? What's unique about American youth culture?
Well, I could definitely back up Sona's point. When I would go to Chile and to Brazil, I would always think like, I'm the American, I'm the person that everyone talks about, or the country that everyone talks about, and really honestly never got a question about how my life is, or how it is in America. And especially since I've started working here, I've tried to get conversations. So I'm really interested to know with some of the international students what life is like in South America or in Asia. I'm really interested to know what their day-to-day stuff that they do. And I always find myself asking the questions. I never really get the questions asked back to me. So I find it really interesting that, we think we're the center of the world, but really I guess one could say that we are, like, politically and economically the center of the world, but it's not like everyone in the world is talking about us on a day-to-day basis.
it's really interesting when you think about it, because in reality, there's only 300 million Americans, which means we are in the minority in the world compared to the other 6.3 billion people who exist here. So it's kind of funny how we kind of assume that we are the most important or whatever. And I think that just could be like internalized nationalism / extreme patriotism that you don't really find that often in other countries. For some reason, Americans are very obsessed with themselves, which is, and it's just kind of funny to think about.
I'm jotting down, I'm taking notes. So any other comments about the, maybe I should tell you this. So when I heard this, phrase that "Make America Great Again," we want to make the greatest nation, I was thinking, I can't imagine a Japanese politician running on the platform of making Japan great again, or a German, politician saying "Make Germany great again." I mean, that doesn't work, right? And so it was just shocking for me that many people actually like that, the phrase, and even wear hats, based on. So anyway, I think it's just that, compared to other cultures, if you have this, the global perspective, maybe things are different. I remember the French president saying, something like, concerning the environment, "Let's make the planet great again." And that to me was a little more global perspective than the other person who talked about this one country. But anyway, many good points here. I really am enjoying this. Any other comments about the youth culture of America?
I think when it comes to commenting about, the negatives of our society, we do so in a very unique way. I think there's a lot more satirization out there. You see a lot of satirical, memes is part of our culture, and, other content. And I think that's really awesome, that we have new, unique ways of talking about issues that we care a lot about, and making it palatable for people that may not normally be interested in politics. And, coming with that, I think we think outside the box a lot. I think the internet's got a lot to do with that. And I think globalization has a lot to do with that. We now have access, if we choose, to all kinds of different ways of thinking. And it really can cause us to look back and question a lot of what we've been told, And I think too, especially with things like religion, existential things, all kinds of cultures around the world, while we all share similar ideas, there's also a lot of differences. And I think it's really fascinating to study all of that. And that's why I hope for a future where, it's not so much several different nations, sort of battling for power on the world stage, but more like a unified group that's working towards, global things like, I don't know, visiting other planets, fixing our planet, helping everyone out. I don't know. I mean, I know it's sort of an idealized notion, but I think that represents our youth culture too, is that, push.
All right, great. Okay, so it is 3:05, and I want to have questions and answers, a time for questions and answers as well. Our last question to the panelists, and again, you can freely unmute yourself and speak, but the last question is, what do you want to do? More specifically, what do you want the college, or maybe the education system as a whole, or maybe the leaders of the society, what do you want them to do in terms of globalization, also including study abroad, international programs? What is your internationalization wish list?
I honestly want to see more education about stuff that are going on outside of the US. Have more international studies and more education about other countries and what's like in other countries, not just in the US. I'm from Syria, and you would be surprised about the little knowledge people know about my country. For example, I had someone ask me if Syria is in Russia. Not quite. I'm from the Middle East, but yeah, I want to see more knowledge about international studies, not just the US.
And especially because we have access to that information, because of technology, we can, see like, oh, what's going on outside the world, and through social media too. Like it brings it all back together where we have, it's right at our fingertips, but it's just, it's something that we need to start moving forward on.
Mhm. For me personally, I love travel. Traveling is one of my favorite things to do in the world. I've traveled a lot. And so I know because of COVID, the study abroad programs had to kind of go away for a little bit, but I would like literally the second that they start opening up again, I would love to participate in them. And I would like to have study abroad programs specifically, not just for, because a lot of the study abroad programs that I've seen have just been specifically for language majors or for global studies majors or things like that. Well, I think there's a lot of other majors that could benefit specifically from studying abroad and seeing how different learning in a different country can be from learning in America. Like for me specifically, environmental science, I'm sure I could learn a lot about the environment in a place like Louisiana or in a place where like the climate is very different from what it is like here. So I think that we could kind of generalize the spectrum of who needs or who would benefit from studying abroad.
For me, as an international student here, I think that the tuition for international students is really expensive. So I think if there are more opportunities for scholarship or any way to lower the cost, that would be a very good opportunity. Yeah. And
I'm sorry, what did you say? Scholarship for what?
scholarship for international students. So provide like, because we are
Yeah, excellent.
international students, so we have many limited restrictions due to the policy. So if there are more scholarship for international students, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I could have certainly used more. Great. This is a wish list time. Anything that you want to see? Anything you wish? Go ahead.
Yeah, I certainly agree with definitely having more access to scholarships and funding for international students, because I mean, honestly, to me personally, I told my parents, I told my friends, I can double down, triple down. Going to College of the Canyons is easily the best decision I've made in my life. Like I double down, triple down, say that, I can say that with full confidence. And I feel like to have people internationally to have them experience that would be, that's why I'm working here, is because I want people to experience this opportunity that I've been able to have. It's been able to save me money. It's been able to get me prepared for transfer to a 4-year university. It's been absolutely the best decision I've ever made.
Okay, so you can, this can be anything that you want to have more taught, or something that you want to do as a student, or something that you want the college to do or encourage. Whatever else is okay. We have a few more minutes.
For me, I don't know if this would necessarily be like a college issue, but I feel like it could be continued into college. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but I really think it would be beneficial to require language proficiency of a second language amongst students, because unfortunately, high school Spanish is not exactly the best way to learn another language. But I definitely feel like it would be beneficial if the college encouraged learning a second language more, just because I feel like it's a really important skill to have, and it also is an important skill to have, especially to connect with others globally. If you only know one language, you are extremely limiting yourself to the amount of people that you can communicate with. So I think encouraging students to learn a second language would be very beneficial.
Yeah, I have to absolutely agree with you there. I think in this rapidly globalizing world, it's almost necessary. I myself have really been trying to learn Spanish because I think in Southern California especially, I think it's really necessary that we learn Spanish, because it's almost, I don't know if it's a majority Mexican American or Latin American population that we have in here, but I want to say that it is. I don't know for certain, but I think that it definitely is necessary, at least for us as Southern Californians to at least know and speak basic Spanish.
Yeah, and I feel like at our college, maybe we can have like non-credit like language classes more. I know that I was able to take a Spanish for healthcare workers class, and that really helped familiarize me with some words that I can use in the health field when I get there. So yeah, definitely seeing more of those kinds of classes would be helpful.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea. I am on the curriculum committee. And by the way, I need to leave in a few minutes to go to the curriculum committee. But I do remember just a few years ago when our committee approved that non-credit course in Spanish in healthcare. I mean, that was like, what a great concept, because you don't have to be a fluent Spanish, speaker to help the Spanish speaking people who come in to get help. So I thought that was great. You're the first person that I actually met who actually took the course. So I really do appreciate your feedback. That's great. Okay. Anything else for that last wish list question? And then after that, I want to move on to a couple of questions in chat, and then I want to open up to anybody else. So any comments from the panelists on that last question? Okay, so this is I think just asked for in general to any panelists who want to answer, but the first chat question was, it seems that the panel agrees that information in very short bites, such as 30 seconds or 1 minute, is preferred. How might this affect how people behave a generation from now?
I think that, and I've also discussed this in my English class, take Chase Dimmock if you want to have some interesting discussions like this. We have talked about how there is sort of a skimming culture now with the internet and everything. So when you take courses or you read material, whether it's qualitative or not, people have learned how to skim. Now, I think for some, that means they don't take in the full information. I think for others, it actually means that they've learned how to find the essence of what is in an argument and extrapolate on that without having to read through 100 pages of a history textbook. No offense, Professor Riffle. But I think that yes, that it has its downsides, but it's really interesting because I think what really is happening is we're amplifying a desire that was already there. And rather than being, necessarily completely controlled by this new technology, I actually think we're learning how to manipulate it. So I think we need to look at all sides of it. And I certainly find myself on the manipulation side, or at least I'd like to think so.
I agree completely. I believe that we tend to overcomplicate access to information in the name of formality. There's a lot of things that could be shortened down and condensed in a way that we can learn and take them in a lot faster, but we, instead choose to write these 20-page essays that could be told in a bullet point list that would be much easier and faster to consume. But because we do still live in a culture where we strongly value like formality and being super with the rules and all this other kind of like structure, that we kind of make it harder for ourselves, which is kind of interesting. So I see like that kind of that's why we have gotten to this format of where videos have gotten shorter and shorter, because we realize we can have the same amount of information in a much condensed version in a way that we can consume a lot more information. So I feel like in the future it's just going to become much less overcomplicated in the way that we consume information.
Okay. So here's another question. How do I guess maybe many of you can answer this question. How do individuals make money from misinformation on social media platforms? So do you know a way to make money by misinformation on social media?
It's definitely, I would say it's definitely a profitable business. I mean, you have the way I see it, or I understand it as, is those people, they gain a following by having that different opinion. And then like at the end of their videos, they'll do an ad for some pillow company or some whatever. And that's where they're able to gain their revenue from those companies that are willing or able to invest in them. as far as I see it.
Also on Instagram, when people share posts, there's also that way of like earning money through that. I believe, and also through TikTok, I know that if you gain a certain amount of like likes or views, you make a certain amount of profit from it. I don't know how much, but because that's never happened to me, but yeah, there's that.
I think it's
I know that they can make, oh, I'm so sorry, Sona, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I think it's called the Creators Fund, where if you gain certain followers or certain likes, you will get money off of it.
I know that if you are, and this goes for anything that you're doing, if you have a target audience, so if you're misinforming, you know, to a specific kind of audience that you're appealing to, then, you know, advertising, you know, companies will come to you and they'll say, oh, you've got this great following, so I'm going to pay you to promote some of these things that we've realized our target audience is your audience. And so that's why I think you might see a lot of snake oil things being sold on perhaps one person's, you know, misinformation campaign, social media, and then, you know, on another, you might find, you know, I don't know, anything that would be associated with that group.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, any interaction, positive or negative, is going to be profitable to the person who makes the post. So they will just kind of try and make the most outrageous post that will get spread the most. And it's kind of awful, because at the end of the day, these kind of people do take advantage of the people who are the most vulnerable. Like, for example, Kim Kardashian marketing skinny lollipops and dieting, these extreme dieting supplements to young girls who already have image issues that look up to her and that are trying to replicate her. So even though there's no scientific evidence that backs up the legitimacy of these products, or if they're even healthy, they do kind of hit people when they're at their weakest, because people on the internet, I believe, are at their most vulnerable. That is when you are at your weakest spot, and then you are able to be hit the most, which is pretty unfortunate at the end of the day.
Yeah, also YouTube, if enough people watch a YouTube video, you start to make profit. I have my calculus videos on YouTube. I am nowhere near making profits. I'm just totally surprised, like why not, you know? Anyway, I have another question which may or may not be related to what we were talking about here, but maybe you can answer this question. How do you feel about Zoom? What is their opinion on, like, you know, certain individuals have cameras on and some of them have, many of them have cameras off. What is their opinion about why individuals have their cameras off? And what do you think generally about Zoom?
At first, I hated Zoom. I absolutely did not want to use it. I was like, this is unbelievable. I hate it. But then we kind of transitioned to quarantine and being fully online. And I realized that I hated online classes even more. So Zoom was better because I was able to have these conversations with people, and I was able to see people's faces, and I was able to kind of have this sense of in person, but not really, but kind of seeing and like interacting together. So Zoom has definitely helped with transitioning to online classes and online school.
I love Zoom. Do not get rid of it. If it wasn't for Zoom, I would not be as involved as I am today. I wouldn't be in associated student government. I never would have been involved with the clubs I was involved with. It has brought out a different type of student that has felt alienated previously and that did not think that they were, you know, capable of getting into this sphere because they had to navigate the one and only social, physical sphere that we don't always, you know, want to jump right into. So I think it's actually been great transition for some of us that are able to do that. Also, in addition to that, I think it actually has expanded access for people who, you know, might be far away from a school. That's not an issue anymore. Proximity is not an issue. Furthermore, it has also forced a lot of people and professors to have to use the online resources that have been available for years. So I love that too. And, you know, overall, I don't want to see it go away. I just want to see it expanded. I want there to be in person, of course, but I think Zoom has a lot of benefits. And as far as the camera on, camera off, here's what I would say on the matter. If it's a math class, I don't think you need it on. If it's a public speaking class, I think you should have it on. It's just kind of common sense stuff like that. And why does it matter that to not have it on? Why is it okay to do that? I mean, multitasking. I can eat and I can pay attention to the lecture. Not every class is very, you know, active and looking for participation from people, but those that are, I definitely think having the camera.
I definitely agree that the convenience of Zoom is very nice, and it is something that I have found to be the biggest advantage of being on Zoom, where I no longer will have to drive 20 minutes to school and then drive 20 minutes back and then account for all that time, and then also be just solely focusing on learning during a lecture versus now where I can, you know, listen to my lecture kind of like a podcast and go clean my room at the same time, which maybe if like you're thinking about it from the perspective of a professor, that may not be very nice, but it is definitely somewhat advantageous in that way. But I do believe that my intake of knowledge has gone down, where I am getting less from lectures now, and I'm more so teaching the material to myself after lectures, which is kind of unfortunate. But I think that's why it's so important that we keep options open for students, and we keep like this kind of hybrid format where we will have some classes that will be online, we'll have some classes that'll be in person, and you can pick what goes best for you. Some students absolutely despise being on Zoom. They cannot pay attention for the life of them. They just don't like it at all, and they kind of crave that face-to-face interaction. And also being in person means that you are able to meet people and also like make friends. It was very hard to make friends during the Zoom era only of COVID, where, you know, you're only meeting for professional purposes and you don't kind of have that downtime where you can build relationships with other people. And a big part of college is making friends and kind of making like those connections, which is kind of fun. So this year now with like the in-person stuff, I have been making like more friends in person, but I still do see value in some Zoom classes.
I also want to add.
Go ahead.
I also want to add that without Zoom, we wouldn't have had Comms Club. So the Communication Studies Club is actually not meeting in person, and we're meeting fully on Zoom. So if it wasn't for Zoom, I wouldn't be the president of Comms Club. So I love Zoom for that.
Yeah, if this pandemic had happened 20 years ago, it would have been very different the way we address it, because there was no Zoom. The internet was very, very difficult, you know, and it was very limited, you know, and so in a sense, we are blessed with the fact that we can use Zoom to communicate, and it's not the same as being physically together, and everybody acknowledges that, but at least we can see people and their faces and have meetings, and so that is a huge benefit. Okay, we have like just a few minutes left, and so I want to wrap this up, and I am just totally impressed. I don't know how the other members of this team feels, but I am just extremely impressed and very touched by the level of conversation we've had here. The dialogues have been excellent. Your insightful comments, and by the way, this will be kept online, so people will be, you know, watching this. Maybe we can make profits, but you know, the hundreds and thousands of people watching this. Probably not. We are not having any misinformation. I would really want, you know, to advertise this to my colleagues and administrators, because they don't get to hear your honest voices from students like this. And so I think this has been a valuable, or I could say invaluable experience. So thank you so much. And I don't know if anybody else want to say anything or any questions. I think I addressed all the questions in the chat, but if you have anything else you want to ask the panelists, or if you happen to just want to talk about something, you know, that would be fine too for the next few minutes. I wish we had more time to elaborate on these things. You guys brought climate change, homelessness, mental health, phone addiction, social media, you know, this fake picture of happiness, you know, TikTok, misinformation, internet. There are so many more to talk. Maybe we'll have you know, sessions next year or something about these you know, individual topics. But any comments? Any concluding comments?
Nothing else except it was a pleasure talking to you guys. You know, it's a very interesting future that we're heading towards, and glad to have some people go along with it.
Very glad to have been here. And I would like to say, as far as homelessness is concerned and student youth, we are working on a housing feasibility study with an outside firm. So hopefully we'll be hearing news in the future of an update on that, and hopefully
if I could just jump in here, first of all, this has been fantastic, and thank you all for being here and sharing your insights. I would love to invite all of you to come back for our next session at 5 o'clock, because one of the things we're going to be doing is posing some of these exact same questions to some of our presenters all week. And I've learned a lot from you, and I want to hear what others have to say based on what you've taught us, and kind of keep this conversation going. Because I think we'll have some interesting common ground that we'll find, maybe some differences too. But I know you're busy, but I'd love to see all of you come back for that next session at 5, because I think it'll be kind of a nice way to build on all of your thoughts.
If I may, additionally, tomorrow we have a town hall meeting, and I would strongly encourage, especially the students who are at this panel, to come and participate, because what we want to do is we want to work on actionable projects. For example, one of the ideas that came out from yesterday's panel is we really should have some kind of podcast going, and then invite the speakers like you, one at a time, or maybe 2 at a time, for dialogues, and then have in-depth discussions on the topics that specifically you guys talk about, either climate change, to talk, happy face, whatever it is that's your heart's desire that you think the community should hear. So we will talk about all that tomorrow at the town hall meeting. Please, 1 o'clock, correct, Marisa?
No, it's I think it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, 1 to 2:30.
That's right.
With that, I believe we have a poll that either Marisa or Tim will launch.
Yeah, so in a moment you will see a poll. There it is, and just I think 3 questions. If you could answer these, this data will be used as we apply for another grant or as we plan another event in the future. So this will be of great use, and so thank you very much for responding to that poll. And once again, I really do thank you so much for participating as a panelist or as a part of the audience. It's been a great conversation. And I hope that many other people would be able to watch this. I know many students and my colleagues and had conflict and they could not come here at 1 to 2:30 on a Thursday afternoon, but I know that they will be able to watch this online. So, and with that, it is time. And so thank you. And I hope that I'll see you again, maybe at 5 o'clock today or 1 o'clock tomorrow or both. All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
you
you for having us.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
That was excellent.